Hi everybody, this is Cindy from Ideas Times 2, and today we're in my kitchen. Yesterday my sister Betsy posted a video with some tips and hints for dyeing paper with tea, Kool-Aid, RIT dye, and herbal teas and things like that. And so today I'm going to continue that idea, the tips for dyeing, by focusing on coffee and avocados and some of the things that I do that work for me. And so you can see my setup is pretty minimal. My kitchen is very tiny. In fact, I'm pretty sure I have the world's smallest kitchen, what my aunt calls a one-butt kitchen, because only one person can bend over at a time without smacking butts. Very small, and I am coffee staining paper pretty much all the time. At least a couple of days a week, 2-3 days, I've got coffee drying somewhere. So let's get started. And I'm not a coffee drinker, and so I know a lot of people who coffee stain their paper, just use their leftover breakfast coffee and always have a ready and steady supply. I don't drink coffee. I'm a tea drinker, but I drink loose tea, and so I never have tea bags in the house for tea dyeing. And so I just use instant coffee, and this is just a Walmart brand. I get the cheapest that I can find because, you know, why spend your money on the good stuff? And I use about a quarter of a cup to start with, and just hot tap water. I don't boil the water. I love the smell of coffee, but boy, I cannot drink that stuff. And I probably use about 4 cups of just hot tap water to a quarter cup of crystals, coffee crystals. And I use as you can see, a cookie tray. And you'll have to excuse the mess of my cookie tray. I only use this for non-baking, you know, basically for staining paper. And since I occasionally stain paper with non-food friendly chemicals, I use this one only for crafting. And so it's gotten really grungy, and I don't really care because, you know, I'm not baking on it. And outside of me, you're the only people who have ever seen it. So today I'm going to be dyeing just your standard printer paper, and I just, you know, pop it in, make sure it's completely covered, and you know, I could take it out right now and I would get some pretty good color, but if I want a little darker color, it's okay to leave it in. I've left paper in for extremely long periods of time. Last week I forgot to take some out of the water, and I went in an hour later, and I had a beautiful color paper, and the paper was fine. It was not, it didn't disintegrate on me. So when I take it out, I'll lay it on paper towels, and the towels that I use are don't have a pattern. You know, you have some that have the quilted pattern. I don't use those for this because they leave lines and marks, and sometimes that's okay. I don't mind that, but other times I would rather not have swirls and curly cues on my paper. So you know, just make sure it's completely covered. And you can see I'm overlapping, And it will take a little longer to dry doing it this way, but I'll also get some nice markings on my paper. So I always overlap. So besides the standard printer paper, sometimes I also use, well, pretty much every one of my journals has a couple sheets of just plain old cheap notebook paper. I'm a high school English teacher, and so there's always paper around. And at the end of the school year, you would be shocked, parents, how much paper and other school supplies are left behind that kids leave in their lockers that they never even take out of the packages. And we take, the teachers take those, and if they're unopened packages, we donate them. If they're open packages, we, or if they're open packages, we'll use them in the classroom. And so usually at the end of the year, I'll take some and fill my own binders for schoolwork with leftovers from the end of the year. By overlapping the papers like this, some of the ink from the line paper will bleed onto the coffee stain paper, and it will leave lines and interesting marks. And if you're good with that, I recommend it. So besides the coffee, I also will coffee stain fabric, and so I have this little waffle weave that I want to put in my bee journal. So it reminded me a little bit of a beehive, and so I'm going to stain that. I'm going to just put it on top of the paper, and when I'm done, I will have some waffle weave print on the paper. And I do the same thing with doilies. If I'm going to want a coffee stain doily, I just pop it in the coffee and I toss it on top of a piece of paper so that I will get the imprint on there. In Betsy's video yesterday, she had a lot of pointers for getting prints on your paper. A lot of really good ideas. So I would check that out if you haven't watched it yet. So I'm going to do one more doily right there, and it's as easy as that. If you want, excuse me, I'm going to wash my hands real fast. I don't want the stain to set in my hands, so excuse the noise. By allowing my paper to air dry like this, I get a lot of really nice markings. I don't know if you can see that there's coffee pooling in here, and those will leave some nice dark marks. If you would like something else that I do, so if you would like more ink in certain places, I generally keep a little bottle, a spray bottle of coffee, and if like this doily here, it's not very dark, so I'm going to give it a spritz, and I've some nice color now there in the middle, and it will dry and give me a darker, a little darker doily there. So that's another tip. And some of the paper that I have dyed in the past has, these gnarly little notebook ends on them. And as a teacher, there's something I absolutely hate. I cannot stand it when kids turn in papers with these on there. But they come in really handy for dyeing. And you can see I have used these many, many times. They're very dark. And I use them over and over again. And I'll just put them in the water. And I think I will put that on there. And I'll put them on the wet paper, and it will give me a a really interesting pattern on there. And they can be done over and over and over again. These little scraps can be used. And I think I'll put that there. So really, for coffee staining, that's all I do. And since I air dry, I will just leave these here this afternoon. And even though it's kind of humid today and it's raining again, it has rained pretty much for the last year and a half, nonstop, starting to feel a little bit like Noah. They still will dry pretty quickly. So I'm just going to leave these here, and I'm going to leave my coffee here because I'm going to do another batch. And before I go to bed in the morning, I'll have another dozen or so papers that are dry, and these will be dry, and I'm going to actually fill another cabinet after I turn off the video. And so those are my tips for using coffee. If you're concerned about the smell, you don't want your paper to smell like coffee, the smell does dissipate. So the first couple of days after you dye, your paper will smell like coffee. There's no way around that. But the smell does go away. Something else that you might be concerned about, and that is acid in the coffee. Coffee drinkers know that coffee has acid and can stain your teeth. It can upset your stomach. You can add a tablespoon or so of baking soda to the coffee. It will dissolve in there. It won't mess with your staining, and it will give you it'll cut the acid in your coffee. So that's another tip. And so now I would like to talk about avocado dyeing. So I'm going to turn off the video, and I'm going to change locations so that I have a little bit more space. So just hang on a second, I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. So I am at my craft table, and you can see my fingernails now need painting because they are stained with coffee. But I did want to talk to you about dyeing with avocado. This is a big trend right now, and I have used it a couple of times myself, and so I thought I would share some of what I learned. But I did not videotape the dyeing process because it takes a long time and it's very boring. So if you have patience, if you have time, you might want to try dyeing with avocado. So what you need is just one, the peel and the pit of one avocado. You need to make sure they're cleaned really, really well. Just scrub them out. If you don't, you're going to wind up with avocado residue in your water, and it really doesn't hurt anything, but it's not really pleasant. It doesn't look good, and you might get little spots on your paper. So I recommend just cleaning them out really, really well. The first batch that I did, I bought an avocado that had a lot of purple in the peel, and I don't know if that made a difference or not, but I got really good color. So that's something you might want to keep in mind. Once you've cleaned the pit and the peel, put them in a Dutch oven or a big pot of water. I started with 14 cups of water, brought it to a boil, and then reduced the temperature and covered it and let it simmer for about an hour. The longer you let it simmer, the darker the color is going to be, and you're going to want some of that water to boil off. So you get a more concentrated amount of water. So when you are done, oh, I forgot my water in the kitchen. I will be right back because I want to show you what it looks like. So this is a glass of what it's going to look like after it's boiled for a while and the colors come out of the pit. And this is almost the color of a medium beer, or a dark cider, apple cider. So this is what it's going to look like when you're done. And once it's boiled down, you know, you might, I boil mine for about an hour, or simmer it for about an hour. You might want to let it go longer. There are no hard and fast rules for this. There's no recipe. It really is up to your discretion, because you might be okay with having a lighter color, or want something darker. So if you want it lighter, don't boil it as long. If you want it darker, just let it keep going. It's not going to hurt anything. So I'll show you some of what I have done this week with the avocados. And you can see the paper is a very pale pink, and the longer you leave it in the water, the darker pink it's going to be. And so here, this is a little bit darker, and you can see it's got some coffee on here as well. I dried them on paper towels that had already had coffee on them, and so I got some different markings on these. And I also did some muslin, and it picked up the color pretty well, and you can see it's also got some coffee on there. This piece right here, I don't know if you can see those little spots, but these are from little pieces of avocado that were in the water, and they left a little black smudge, and it's stained on there. I don't mind them because I think it adds a little character, but if it's something you're worried about, you want to make sure that those peels are really, really, really clean. And you know, this paper right here, you can see these two. Can you see the difference in the colors on the video? I hope so. It's pretty noticeable. These two were the first two sheets that I did, and I did not leave them in the water very long. I kind of dipped and took them right out, and they're very, very pale. The darker colors, especially like this one, I let soak in the water for quite a while, for a couple of minutes to 15, as long as 15 minutes. And it doesn't hurt the paper at all. You can see it's not brittle, it's not torn. It didn't shred on me. The paper's pretty sturdy. You can leave it soaking in that water for a while, and the longer you leave it soak, the darker your color is going to get. You know, leave it in there 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Experiment with it and see all of the different shades of pink that you can get. I also did some doilies, paper doilies, but they did not do as well. And I don't know why, if there's a coating on here that just didn't pick up the avocado, but I wound up giving this a spritz with some coffee in order to get at least some color on there. So that was something that did not work, but I also used it on some some silk, and let me show you. This is a project I finished yesterday, and I stained the silk ribbon here with avocado, and it turned out beautiful. And inside I have quite a few things that I use the avocado stained paper for, including this little journal. And inside is all of the paper in here is avocado stained, so it's all got a really pretty pink tinge. The lined paper did not color, just like with the doily, did not do well with the avocado stain, but your regular standard HP printer paper I thought turned out really nice. So most of what I use in my journals is your standard coffee stained paper, and you know, here's some of the you know, different papers that I stained earlier this week, and you see it's got some really nice coloration on there. Lined paper. Coffee works much better on lined paper than avocado. I won't be wasting lined paper on avocado anymore. When I dye them, like I showed you back in the kitchen, I overlap them, and you can see it's got a clear demarcation line on here between where the paper was laying and what was not under another sheet of paper, and it gives it just a little different visual eye appeal. And you know, I was busy this week. I did a lot of paper dyeing, so you can see you get a different look to the paper using coffee compared to tea. And if you're looking for something a little different and you eat avocados, try it on your paper. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm so pleased with how beautiful these sheets of paper turned out. And the person who bought my little floral ephemera kit, I hope she will be too, with all of her beautiful pink stained paper. So I hope that some of these tips for dyeing your paper with coffee and avocado are helpful. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, if you, you know, I air dry my paper, and one reason I do is because my kitchen and, well, my house is very tiny, and having that oven on for long periods of time, even at a low temperature, is stifling. It gets so hot in here, and so that's one reason I air dry. And the kitchen, you know, some people have kitchens that, you know, you can sit down at your table and be drinking a cup of coffee, watching the news, puttering around while your paper is in the oven. I don't have that option. My kitchen is so small. It doesn't even have a table in it. So I'd just be standing in front of the oven, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the paper to dry. So that's one reason I air dry mine. If you want to dry yours in the oven, that is, of course, a viable option. Just make sure it's at a low temperature, probably no more than 200 degrees, because your paper will burn, will darken, will become very brittle very fast. You know, 1 minute it's wet and the next minute it's burnt. So if you use the oven method, just be very careful. No hotter than 200 degrees. Keep your eye on it until you figure out how your oven works, but it shouldn't take more than 12-15 minutes to dry 3 or 4 sheets of paper in the oven. I have heard that there are people who put their paper in the dryer to dry. I have not tried that. If you do, if that's how you do it, write a little note at the bottom of the video and let me know your method, because it's something I have not tried. But it might be worth it. I would not have coffee stained paper all over my countertops all the time. But thank you so much for watching. Leave a positive comment. If you've not subscribed, please do so. We're edging up to 250. That's our next goal, and we're going to have a giveaway when we get up to 250. So we really appreciate your support. Thank you for spending some time with me today for part 2 of dyeing your paper, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.